Is the mic working? You got to do that, right? That's tradition. Everyone hear me? Yeah, sound right. Fuck it. We're going without speaker notes because technology is shit. Cool. Actually, no, I really need my fucking speaker notes. So.
Do you want me to just ask you questions whilst you sort of...
Yeah, sure. Turn it into a panel. Oh, this is fucking dog shit. Just fix it for me. Fix it for me, Alex. Should we do a panel?
Yeah, let's do it. So, Scott, what is your favourite Pokemon?
Haunter.
Why?
Because I didn't have friends as a kid, so I couldn't trade it to get a Gengar. Hey, this is a good start. Hey, come on, speaker notes over here. Let's go.
There we go.
And then back to the other screen for
Then
full
hit
screen.
that little full screen there.
I'm coming, all right?
Actually, just don't press any buttons. It's fine. It's
No, watch. I got it. Okay.
Okay, I'm just doing a fucking PDF next time.
Scott Riley!
Hey! Oh, don't even have notes for that slide. Yeah. So, right, I'm going to try and get us over the line today. I'll be as quick as possible, mostly because I really need a wee. Yeah, so my speaker notes aren't syncing to the slide, so I might have to just do it with fucking mouse. Okay, yeah. So I've stood up here making a twat of myself for about 5 minutes because I can't make computers work. But other than that, my name's Scott. My pronouns are he, him. In this house, we don't misgender our friends. You can follow me on Twitter if you want. It's at Scott_Riley. I'm head of product and design at Gitbook, which means I do 2 jobs but get paid for 1. We're hiring if you want a job. If you want the head of product, one of mine, you can have that. Come speak to me a little bit later. We are hiring for a bunch of different roles. Pretty cool. In 2017, 18, I got to write a book, which was nice. When it was finished, writing it wasn't as fun as I thought it would. This is not going to be a big self-promotion, like please buy my book kind of talk, but I'm just going to quickly get a drink of water. Oh yeah, can't whack the bottle, sorry. Oh. Does anyone else want one? Yeah, cool. Bottle's just there. Help yourself. You can go there and buy it. But yeah, every time I give this talk, people leave. So I'm going to save you some time now. I'm just going to list quickly like who might want to leave, who might be offended by it, who might not enjoy it. Tories, product managers, people called Peter, TERFs, adult Harry Potter fans. Bristol seems to love Harry Potter, so you can all fuck off if you want. You cannot get away from Harry Potter. Small Bar had a Harry Potter fucking stout. That was a thing. Someone drank it. Behavioral designers and Luke Murphy. As well, I quickly want to just like some of the values I like to try and bring to like this conversation and this industry, and just kind of like where I'm coming from with these kind of conversations, just to be upfront about that. So I'll always be myself. I'll bring as much of myself as I can to a situation, to a conversation, and I will own my fuck-ups when and if I make them. Yeah, I'm not here to placate people. I'm not here to placate my bosses or industry people who like design work in the way it does right now. I don't really tolerate bullshit, and I don't let things slide when I feel like they're unfair. Never punch down. We see this a lot in society now, especially in the UK, I think. But I just want to give you like a little scenario, like a fake scenario. This isn't a real person, but if you can just imagine, you wrote a book about a magical virgin who grows up to be a wizard cop. And that book and the subsequent movie adaptations, if there were any, hypothetical, made you a billionaire and allowed you to live in an actual fucking castle. So you woke up one day in your actual fucking castle and said, you know who really, really needs putting in their place? Trans people. And then you got on Twitter, made a twat of yourself, and started a movement against trans people. That doesn't make you brave. that makes you a cunt. So like with this one, I like to think of everyone talks about the blue shell in Mario Kart, like, you know, it hits the people in first so the people behind can catch up, that kind of shit. Yeah, so with that out the way, if you want to leave for any other reason, remember to shout, "I'm not a Tory," and we'll be okay. So I don't know who has the book. You can put your hand up if you do, put it down if you have it but you haven't read it, which is most people. But if you have read it, you might say, "Scott, how are you going to fit 124,000 words of erudite, insightful, cutting, witty content into a 40-minute talk?" And there's two answers to that. One, might go a little bit over. And two, there's only 2 good chapters in the book, and we'll talk about those today. First chapter we're going to talk about is learning a bit about attention and distraction, how our brains are wired for attentional focus, and how our brains are wired for, learn to fucking speak, distraction. So I just want you to imagine that you are in a coffee shop, or maybe the adult creche that is the bottom floor of a WeWork, if you have ever worked there, and just think of all the stimuli around you at that time. People making coffee, you know, 2 chads playing ping pong, all these distractions, the smell of food being made, the smell of coffee being made, the sound of coffee grinders, all that kind of stuff. And then think if you're trying to get some work done there. For a lot of people, especially if you are, you know, so-called not neurodivergent, you might have found it easy to focus on what you're working on. And it might just feel like all that stuff in the background is just background noise, right? You're not sat there listening to every conversation. You're not sat there paying attention to every coffee that's being made, every piece of food that's being brought out, all that kind of stuff. It's just background noise. So this is known as a task positive mode. This is basically us being in a state of focus. We are applying conscious attention to the thing that we are working on, and unnecessary stimuli are just blurred into this blanket of background noise. But let's say there's a loud crash. Someone drops a coffee, drops a plate, something like that. That is almost always, if you are of, you know, you can hear, that's going to drag you away from that, right? You're looking at like the smashed coffee, wherever it was, and you're pulled away from whatever you were focusing on. So this is a startle reflex, and it keeps us alive. It's innate. We need it. If there's a big noise, we need our attention drawn to it. Sometimes it's fucking pointless because it's just some dickhead dropping a coffee, and then other times it's a saber-toothed tiger coming around the corner trying to eat you and your 16 grandkids. But something a bit more interesting is, let's say you're sat there and you're working away and you're in this task positive mode, and you hear someone say your name on a table nearby, like someone, you're working away and someone goes, "Oh yeah, that Luke's a prick." We have an emotional weight into our own name, like we've heard it every single day as we've been growing up, right? We attach like something to that. It's important to us. And this drags us away from whatever we were focused on. But this tells us something really interesting about our brains, right, in that state. It's that we're constantly analyzing our environmental stimuli. So if you were asked at any point as you were working away, "Hey, what were those people talking about?" You would probably say something like, "Oh, I don't know. I wasn't listening. I didn't hear them." But as soon as you hear your name, you're alerted. Your attention is, you know, directed to that stimuli. So it shows us that we are actually constantly analyzing. It's a background process for us. We are analyzing what's happening here. And it's almost directing attention where it sees fit, right? Like there are innate processes going on that direct our attention to where it might be needed. It was background noise, and now it's not. So, like I said, if that crash was like something breaking through a window, so, you know, a car crash, something like that we need to be alert to and respond to, this is really good, right? It keeps us alive. If you were sat in a coffee shop and that happened, you would want to know about it. You wouldn't just want to be sat there and be like, "Nope, just going to work on my slam poetry," or whatever the fuck people do in coffee shops these days. But distraction is our brain's way of saying, like, "Hey, like, shit, we might need to care about this." This is something to like kind of remember and take through. The vast majority of mental process evolved over time where bears were trying to eat our whole fucking faces. There's a lot that our brain does to try and keep us alive and not get eaten by bears. Like, I don't think that's a common problem for a lot of people right now, but our brains seem to think it's still a thing. So we know that our brain's equipped for focus. We can focus. That's the one. We know that our brains are equipped for focus, but they're also equipped for distraction. And both of these things are important to us. They're imperative to us. And this isn't good or bad, right? It just is. That's what we are. We have no say in it. For the vast majority, it's about how we apply ourselves to it or how we treat those processes that we know that other people experience. It just is. We also don't have a bottomless pool of mental resources. You can't just sprint non-stop, right? This is another thing to take into consideration. Every action that you do, whether that's thinking about something, whether that's switching tasks from one thing to another, whether that's being distracted by something else, that costs real resources in your brain. Your brain is part of a living organism. It needs inputs to produce outputs. It needs glucose to provide it energy so it can switch on it. We aren't just talking about this mushy thing that lives in our heads that's constantly on. It has to be fueled by things, and it expends energy when it does things. If you lift weights or if you train in any way, if you run, then you probably know that you can't just go to the gym and spend 20 hours in there and have linear success for the whole time. At some point, your muscles are going to be depleted of glucose, and you need to take a rest. Once your mental reserves in your brain run out, you get really shit, right? It's really, really hard. That's when we get burned out. That's when we get tired. We have to take a break. Distractions come at cost. One of the most costly things we can do is switch our attention from one thing to another. It's not free. So anytime we distract someone, anytime we take someone's focus away from what they should be, or to them, what's important to them, we're actually asking them to spend mental resources. And like we've just seen, a lot of times, they don't really have a say in that. It just happens. The brain's like, shit, we need to look at this. And eventually we run out of these mental resources and our brains tend to soup. So how does distraction tend to play out in this industry in particular? The spoiler to this is not very well. So push notifications are a really good example of this. They are designed for distraction, right? Push notifications, their literal purpose is to distract. It's to say, hey, this thing happened that you might care about more than anything else, like at any point right now. And we're so attached to our phones, we are so attached to when our phones make noises that, yeah, this shit grabs our attention. So what we see a lot is people using them for marketing purposes like this. This is not how to use distraction. If you do this, this is why your stepdad always forgets your birthday. This is another good one. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Just whatever. Yeah, these are cool. Ad blockers, debatable whether we should be using them, whether it's ethical to use them. I'd argue it's less ethical to throw ads down people's fucking throats than to do this kind of stuff. But hey, this has taken people away from the task that they had in mind, which was to read a Business Insider article, apparently. I don't know who the fuck wants to do that, but they can't because they got an ad blocker on. This one as well, just random fucking pop-ups as you're scrolling through. Another good thing about like something like this, where just like full screen takeover. I don't know what the fuck I was reading at this time, but it wasn't anything about paleo. This is also good. This is confirmed shaming. No thanks. I don't like delicious food. And I know a bit about nutrition. And I know that the paleo diet is just chicken and gravel. So delicious. Cool. So yeah, I'm going to try and go as quickly as I can through this. So yeah, if it's a bit disjointed, like forgive me. One of the things and one of the theories that we apply to how our brains self-regulate their mental resources is something called the cognitive miser theory. And this is really important when we start looking at biases and how biases play out in how we design things and how things are designed for us. So the idea of the cognitive miser theory is quite simple. We make decisions quickly based on a number of factors, and the main thing we want to do is get to good enough. Our brains don't care about perfect. They want to see out of the most available solutions to me now, which is the quickest to arrive to that will satisfy what I need to do. Yeah, and we work on biases a lot more than we'd like to admit. So anyone who's read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman will probably be aware of a bunch of the biases that we have going on that our brains kind of just default to, the heuristics we go through to say, okay, fuck this, like, this will do. This is fine. I see this thing, it's flashing red, it's going to get my attention, maybe I'll click it. There's another concept called satisficing, which feeds into this. So is anyone like portmanteaus? Because this is pretty good. It's suffice and satisfy, right? Like, we're looking for good enough. We're not looking for perfect. So does it satisfy the criteria relative to the importance of this thing to us? And is it good enough at this point in time? So a good example is putting your socks on. For the people who've decided to wear socks today, when you put them on this morning, it might be a little bit different because it's a big fancy web event and you want to wear your best socks. But like, I can almost guarantee that what most people, and that's a dangerous assumption, Jeremy's already talked about baking assumptions in, but I can guarantee that most people here, maybe they didn't put every single sock they own in a circle, like some fucking tribute to a foot fetishist, and be like, this one today. Like, what you probably did is open the drawer and grabbed a pair of socks and fucking put them on, right? Maybe, like, you realized it was cold outside, that changed the criteria, it made you think a little bit more, hey, I need my warm socks, or I'm going to the gym, so I need my, like, sports socks, something like that. It doesn't really fucking matter what socks we wear. Like, one specific pair of socks, even if it's, like, a matching pair or not, it's not going to ruin our day. Like, the other day, I went out in one Pokemon sock and one Lion King sock, and I felt fucking great. So, but this is what we talk about. When we talk about satisficing, we talk about something that is adequate for our needs and available to us right now. It's a balancing act between adequacy and availability. So adequacy changes based on how important something is to us, right? Like, if we really care about something, the threshold for adequate might be really high. If we're not that bothered by it, the threshold for adequate might be quite low. It's not a innate concept that we have like a scale of 0 to 100 and everything is always like on that scale of adequacy to us. It changes based on our mood, it changes based on our needs, our desires, all that kind of stuff. Availability as well can mean proximal availability, how close is this thing to us? It can mean like mental availability, how easy is it to recollect this thing, from the stores in my brain. But it's a very good heuristic for how the brain kind of works when faced with a decision to make with what to focus on. So dark patterns gets brought up a lot. A lot of people don't like this phrase. A lot of people say there's like racist connotations to it and there's movements to that. I am inclined to agree with that. I don't think we should use this term. I think there's better terms. Also, if you say that it's bad on Twitter, the person who invented it might try and get you fired from your job through your company's contact form because you called Donald Norman a boomer gobshite. That might happen. I don't know why I said that. I like to think it was user hostile design. This is nothing new. We've spoken about this for a long, long time. Hostile design, user hostile design, all that kind of stuff. But it's basically exploitative, manipulative design decisions, right? Let's look at some false urgency. I really do not give a shit how many other people book this hotel. But apparently that's more important, like in huge red, high contrast, in high demand stuff than anything else on there. It's quite clearly trying to use my visual perception and distraction to make me rush a decision that maybe I want to spend a bit more time trying to make. Shit hotel, by the way. This is a good one. I call this game Spot the Fucking Button. Only one of these actually does the thing that you want to do on this page. This is a good one, like a primary button being used like to submit an auto-selected thing. Delta, yeah, because airlines are exceptionally ethical. We all know this. The first row, this opts you out. The first row opts, we've all seen this shit, right? Opt me in, opt me out. Flipping the mental model between two rows. Royal Mail hates you. That's the only explanation I have for this one. Conventions are really, really, really important. We've spoke about this, folks have spoken about this today a lot. But relying on conventions is, really, really important for us. This is an eponymous law, and I don't know who it is, but Jeremy set this one up. It's Nielsen. I think it's the Nielsen thing. Yeah, thank you. People spend more time on other products than they do on yours, right? That doesn't mean you have to copy everything popular and that you can't innovate and stuff like that, but it does mean that you need a valid reason to do something different, to break convention, right? Whether that's, using a bunch of divs instead of a native, HTML element or something like that, whether it's more a design-specific decision. But conventions are important, and this is one of the things that feeds into that. Okay, next chapter, motivation and reward. I will tie all this together at some point in the talk if there's time. But yeah, the second kind of point we're going to look at is when we talk about motivation and reward in technology. When we do talk about motivation and reward, we're almost guaranteed to come across some specific concepts. One of them is behavioral design. I might talk about it as persuasive design. There's a whole lab for this in Stanford, which is fucked. We might talk about habit forming products, another popular book. But that's all just dickhead speak for exploitative design. It's looking at how the brain works, understanding the niche, and saying, hey, you can do what we want you to do. That's all you can do. I don't think there's any ways to look at habit forming, to look at persuasive design in a capitalist system and apply these ethically. The crossover for ethical and these kind of practices extraordinarily low. So I'm quite old. Like, I'm not old. Like, there's a thing with millennials where we like to act like we're like fucking 102 or something because our 30th birthday was still fucking like, you know, a few months ago. And, you know, I am at an age where I make strange noises when I get up or when I sit down. And I did start my career in tech like really, really early. I don't know what that noise was. Let me have a drink. So I have been around the block a few times, even though I look like I've drank from the fountain of youth. And there's some tidbits of advice that I really want to share. Never cross a picket line. Never shag a Tory. And shut the fuck up about dopamine. So let's talk about dopamine. So this always gets brought up. We always bring dopamine up in tech, especially when we talk about rewards and motivation and all that kind of stuff. And almost everywhere brands it as the reward chemical. You might have heard people saying, oh yeah, I just, you know, pulling out the phone and saying, oh yeah, I just need my dopamine fix, and, you know, it's fine. It's not the way it works, but okay. But even worse, you might have like a product manager at some point come up to you and say, oh, can we just inject a bit of dopamine into this? And it's like, yes, Peter, that's how it works. We're baking a cake. We'll just put some fucking dopamine on the top and we're all good. Yeah, just put the dopamine in just about there. I've got 2 Post-its. Right between there is where I want the dopamine, and we're good to fucking ship. It's better to think about dopamine and its role. Don't be scared by that progress bar, by the way. We are going to go very quickly through some slides. But I've just noticed I kept it up, and I am scared of pressing buttons on a computer because apparently I'm not allowed to do that. It's better to frame dopamine in the realm of compulsion, what we are compelled to do given a specific response. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter. If you want a really abstract, basic, borderline useless description of the brain, think of it as a huge network of billions and billions of neurons. And every neuron has the potential to be connected to its neighbor. And this is how, you know, pretty much everything in our brain works. You see like diagrams, and it's like, you know, things flashing up in a brain, and to show like what's happening when certain neurons are firing and certain connections are being made. But there is a gap between a neuron called the synaptic cleft. And it's the job of neurotransmitters to transmit, hence the name, information from one neuron to the other and make it like jump over that gap. So this is kind of what it looks like. You know, it's not a network as a diagram as we would see it. There's a gap, and that gap is the synaptic cleft. And then we have this bunch of information in there that kind of just fills in right between. And, oh, shit. Oh, he is fucking everywhere, isn't he? But what does dopamine do? What dopamine does, and this is something that is you know, pretty well documented, completely depends on where it's released. So dopamine can help us lactate. Even people who were not assigned female at birth can lactate if their dopamine is fucked up. And I think this kind of answers a little bit about why Peter, the product manager, was asking for his dopamine there. I think it's because he was breastfed until he was 24. But it also regulates our motor activity, right? If you have a deficiency of dopamine in your basal ganglia, that's Parkinson's disease. If you have too much dopamine in your basal ganglia, you have really erratic movements. Sometimes you get really you seem really agitated and like you can't control your extremities and stuff like that. But really where we focus on it a lot is kind of learning and conditioning and reward-seeking behavior. And this is probably where dopamine is most talked about and like most widely spoke about, is when we talk about like these little rewards that we give ourselves, we appear to give ourselves. So we can think of reward in terms of reward cycles. There's a signal that says, hey, you're about to do some work. There's the work that actually happens, the reward, and it just repeats. So the signal, it's your brain just saying, hey, we need to do something. There might be a reward at the end. Shall we go fucking do it? As the work, so it's actually performing the task, doing the action, wherever that may be. There's the reward at the end of it. So that, whatever reward that is, it's something generally that makes you feel good. And then you associate the task with the reward, and you're more inclined to repeat it. This is where dopamine is actually released. Most people think it's here. Most people think when the reward happens, that's where all the dopamine is released. But this is where it plays the most prominent role. It's in the signal and the work. It's reward-seeking behavior. It's not reward-receiving behavior. Basically, it doesn't make you like shit. There's no, you'll see later how much scientists like fucking with animals, right? There's an experiment that folks did, which is really cool, where they just took all the dopamine out of rats' brains. They were just like, no, you can't have that. And they still displayed hedonic responses, right? Like the response we have when we like something, it was still displayed. No dopamine whatsoever, impossible for them to release it, but they still showed hedonic responses. They enjoyed stuff. When they were hand-fed, they enjoyed it. But they wouldn't go looking for food. You take the dopamine away, the rats were just like, what? Food? What's that? And they literally just stayed there and died, which is not a fun story, but, it's what happened, and it goes to show what dopamine's role kind of really is in this reward cycle process. So we need to talk about Pavlov. So Pavlov, as many of you might know, and actually very similar to Luke, is most famous for abusing dogs. But basically what Pavlov kind of went on to show with his groundbreaking research, this dog hear sound, dog get treat. Dog like treat, dog like sound. I am good science man. But this actually is he's a piece of shit. He was a piece of shit wherever. If you like animals in any way, Pavlov can get in the fucking bin. But it showed us a lot about dopamine's role and generally just the brain's response to signal and reward, right? And it's very common now when we talk about conditioning in dogs and stuff like that. We train our dogs with treats all the fucking time. That wasn't English. This came to be known as classical conditioning, and it's something that's informed a lot of kind of behavioral science since then. We need to talk about someone else called B.F. Skinner, who was also a piece of shit in many ways, not just for following on from Pavlov. But he did very similar stuff to Pavlov, but he decided to do it with pigeons instead. And the groundbreaking movement of B.F. Skinner was summed up, what if Pavlov, but with pigeons, and we electrocute them. I am good science man. You might have heard of the term Skinner box. People use that a lot. Your phone is a Skinner box. I don't know if you've heard that before, but basically that was a little room, or a tiny pigeon room that Skinner would set up that had places where you could get treats, but you would also get electrocuted as well. Some Saw level shit, but he did it and he probably fucking enjoyed it. But it basically shows that we are absolute fucking gobshites when it comes to reward-seeking behavior. If the environment is set up accordingly, we will seek reward. No matter what, fuck the consequences, this might be good. And it really did enhance the understanding at the time of these stages. But it also kind of revealed something a lot more fascinating, which was reward variance, so in the form of chance. If you introduce chance into this, it gets really fucky. It's fun. It became known as operant conditioning, as a follow-on from classical conditioning. And yeah, the big part of this that was quite seminal was reward variance. This goes against all fucking logic, right? You would think that, hey, this thing makes us like go looking for rewards. If we know that we're going to get one, if we absolutely know for sure, we should be more motivated to do that thing, right? But nope, there's a chance our brains are just like, wow, this is fun. The slot machines, everyone, again, the phone is the slot machine in your pocket. Tristan Harris, when he actually, left from making phone slot machines in everyone's fucking pocket in the work he was doing, went on to like coin that term. But it really is, it's the same concept when you're refreshing Twitter looking for likes, when you're looking for social engagement and stuff like that. It's the same concept as a slot machine. We like easy tasks. We like variable rewards. Shallow rewards are things that don't satiate us enough. Because if we're satiated at the end when we get the reward, why do we need to go looking for something else? But then there's also the high potential payoff, right? So this is like, something like that's close to my heart. The amount of like working class good people I've seen absolutely ruin their fucking lives through gambling and through the systems that are designed to keep them gambling. The casino models, going the bookies, all that shit. It's fucking horrible. But this is Tech's model. This has been Tech's model for a long time of how behavioral science, how reward and motivation gets applied. So when we look at reward variance, in the example of Twitter, we might post something. Someone engages with it, and we just repeat and repeat and repeat. Without going too much into it, this is kind of what's happening here. The easy task, writing a tweet. It's not hard. Some tweets are fucking poetry. Some tweets are incredible, immaculate, amazing. Anything with a Shrek gif is fucking top tier. But it's not that hard to write a tweet, right? It's not too hard to write a tweet. We can do it with minimal conscious effort. We have variable rewards. Sometimes we get likes. Sometimes we get retweets. Sometimes we even get a lot of shares and we go viral. We get shallow rewards. And this is the kicker with a lot of how this kind of like, the social media dynamic works. The rewards are never enough to actually make us feel satiated in any way. They're never enough to make us feel like, I did something really good. They're like, hey, I did something quite good. I wish more people would like it though. Oh, this isn't good enough. So we keep trying. And this is by design. Don't think that it's too difficult to put meaningful shit at the end of an experience for people. But by design, they're shallow. We have to keep coming back. Otherwise, people don't make fucking money. There's no perceived loss, or at least for a lot of people. When we are doing this work of writing a tweet or any shit like that, we are not sat there thinking, hey, how much is this going to cost in glucose? How much is this going to cost in mental resources for me to do? A lot of times we're on so-called autopilot and we don't perceive the loss, right? With a slot machine, you have a bucket of fucking coppers next to you and it's going in, and it's going in. You see what you're losing. You mightn't care about it, but it's perceived. You see what you're losing. This boils down to, this is nothing new, eyes on pixels. The more you're looking at Twitter, the more you're looking at tweets, the more you're looking at adverts, right? And we are being encouraged and exploited to, follow this loop. This isn't a fucking talk about like, mindful tech or anything like that, even given the name of the fucking book, but this is behaviorism, right? This is applying all the stuff that Pavlov and Skinner, fucking around with animals, kind of like invented. There's one thing we should all kind of come to terms with is behaviorism is fucking dead. It had a mini revival with tech, but this is not an accepted science anymore. No one in the scientific community, apart from a few fucking weirdos, think that behaviorism is useful in any way. We've evolved past it. Like to put it into context, Comrade Chomsky wrecked behaviorism so hard that he invented cognitive science. Pretty fucking cool. But it looks good on postage, right? This kind of shit. You whip this out in the middle of a meeting, you look fucking smart. We like flows that look like this in design because they're not difficult. You go from A and you go from B, and then you just draw a big fucking arrow back to the start. We like this shit. But it's fucking dead. It really is. So I want us to look a bit at humanism. So humanism kind of spun up like, in many different formats, but one of the key areas that I want to look at is like how humanism encourages to see a person as a whole. That whole is vastly different to the sum of our parts. If behaviorism treats us as a closed box, something comes in, shit happens and something comes out. Humanism is about looking at the constituent parts and realizing that they make something up that's completely unique to what those individual parts are. It uses a lot of qualitative approaches, which we should like in design. And it can be a really good partner for our design thinking and our design process. It looks into things like self-expression, self-exploration, and existentialism. And again, it goes back to seeing a person as a whole, like something that's vastly different to the sum of their parts. Not more than the sum of our parts, but different. And for anyone who is into Gestaltism, the school of Gestaltism, it's brought up a lot for its association with visual perception, so designers here might be familiar with that. The idea that something is different to the sum of its parts is core to the school of Gestaltism. I'm not German, I can't fucking say the word. So I want us to look a bit at self-determination theory as a counterpoint to all the bullshit, habit-forming, persuasive stuff that we usually see in design. And it looks at 3 key concepts. It's a theory of intrinsic motivation. So it's the idea that we are motivated by internal machinations, and desires rather than external things like money. And it shows that we want to show an element of mastery to what we do, an element of competence to what we do. We are intrinsically rewarded when we can communicate that we are good at something, or when we feel that we are good at something. We want to interact and feel connected with other beings on this planet, right? We are universal. We should be universal. We should be encouraging relatedness. We should be feeling that. And we do feel rewarded when we find community, when we find our tribe, when we find our people. And autonomy as well. We want to feel a sense of causality, that we are in control of what we do. We are in control of our actions, and we control the narrative that we portray of ourselves. So intrinsic motivation is more powerful, healthier, and more transformative than extrinsic motivation. If you take someone who's intrinsically motivated by something, I guarantee a lot of people here who grew up loving the web, now you get paid to do it. Do you love it as much as when you were fucking around making GeoCities sites? Maybe you do, but in certain experiments it's been seen that if you introduce money to a situation where people are already intrinsically motivated, it actually reduces the overall motivation. So the introduction of extrinsic motivation to an already intrinsically rewarding act actually lowers overall motivation to complete a task. Yeah, we like positive reinforcement and self-determination more than we like money, basically. The fact that we need money to survive, that's bullshit, but it's a thing. But money is an abstraction for the things it allows us to do. And if you put the things that we want to do and let us do the things that we want to do in front of us, we will find that more rewarding than if you put like 20 quid on the table and said, Jay, if you can do a fucking spinaroo on your yo-yo, I'll give you that 20 quid, right? You do your yo-yo because you love it, man. We love you for your yo-yoing. A really good kind of, I guess, reimagining of self-determination theory is Paloma Medina's biceps model. I don't know if anyone's aware of Paloma Medina, if you've read any of her stuff. She's really fucking good. She's more focused on, or at least this biceps model is more focused on like team building and team leadership inside companies and stuff like that. More of a people management framework than anything else. But I think it has a huge carryover to design. It basically looks at BICEPS. So belonging, improvement, choice, equality, predictability, and significance. So with belonging, we want community and we want connection. We want to find an element of kinship. With improvement, we're looking at making progress, but we're also looking at improving the lives of others with the things that we do as well. With choice, we want flexibility, we want autonomy, we want non-linearity to the way we conduct ourselves. With equality, we want access to resources, access to systems, and access to information, and we want the same access as other people. Predictability. If we are making direction towards our goals, if we have certainty over our resources, whether that's money, whether that's time, whether that's energy, we want that. We want to know that we have that it's available to us. And significance. We want to know that we have an impact on something. We want to know that we have a clear purpose. We want to know that in any given scenario, under any given system, that we can act with agency and intent. So why is big tech so obsessed with behaviorism? Control. It's the simple one. Predictability. Again, whether we like it or not, you can look at that diagram of reward-seeking behavior, and it is predictable, and it is proven to be predictable. Compulsion. Again, we want people to do things. We want people to click that button because it makes us money. And capitalism, right? Like that's the borderline, you control all of that, you have the ability to, or at least the perceived ability to direct people to perform certain things and manipulate them and exploit them in certain ways, then if they click the big rectangle that makes us money, then we'll keep doing that. But this is something that I think a lot of the commentary on like the social kind of bubble, or the social dilemma, I guess is the fun term now, that was that fucking Netflix documentary or whatever, is that people see exploitative design as the reason that something is evil, right? Like, hey, like, I'm sorry, I don't know if anyone works at Facebook or fucking Meta or wherever it is now, right? But Meta isn't evil because it practices exploitative design. It practices exploitative design because it's evil, right? And it's a symptom of a lack of ethics and a need to control and manipulate and extract from a specific system. And something really important for us to think about, especially in design, is how our work kind of reflects the system within which it's created, right? There are certain things that are unavoidable with the work that we do. As much as we want to be super ethical about it, as much as we want to think like we're doing the right thing in a constrained system, our work will always reflect and mirror the systems within which it was created. You cannot create equitable work within an oppressive system. You just can't do it. This is a fact. Maybe we're moving away from this with the bubble bursts and stuff like that, but the vast majority of whether we're working in FANG, whether we're working in startups, whether we're contracting, whether we're freelancing, we're working in an industry that's propped up with venture capital from shitty people. Startups get built and founded, and they grow to make money for and from shitty people. And there's a direct line from your KPIs to some jizz-loving white dude who eats babies for fun. This is categorically proven, 100%. This is what happens when we make improvements, and we're good soldiers, and we get our APIs high, and our fucking activation rate goes up by 5%. Some baby eating dude in a suit who looks like Warren Buffett after cryogenic freezing is fucking eating a baby and loving it. And this all sounds like, hey, yeah, bullshit. There's no ethical design under capitalism, and there kind of isn't. But we all need our jobs, right? We all need to survive. Times are tough. You know, we might all be in varying positions of privilege right now, but we still need our jobs. We still need to get paid. It's just reality. So you might protect yourself. You might protect yourself with willful ignorance. You might have protective apathy. You might say, hey, you know, what can I do about it? This is the way it is. I need to get paid. This is what I'm going to do. Might be begrudging acknowledgement. Same thing, like, yeah, I'm doing it because I have to. It's a system. It's the way it works. Or you might have an element of subversion and rebellion to your approach to that. You might say, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to try and subvert the system. I'm going to try and have an impact. I'm going to try and make a change while still acknowledging that it's bigger than me, and it's bigger than the people I work with, and it's bigger than the one company I can have an impact on right now. I don't really have a bunch of answers to how we can take ourselves away from these practices, which is, you know, a bit disappointing for a fucking first day keynote at WebDevConf, but you know, no one said I had to be good. I do have some questions that might prompt some thinking though. So how would your work change if you treated the human mind with respect? If you understood the cost of distraction? If you encourage competence and growth instead of a never-ending cycle of reward-seeking behavior? You optimized for belonging, and you allowed for true autonomy within whatever you create. I do have some advice that's actually a little bit more practical than not shagging Tories, which is still the main takeaway from this, but we in tech can democratize access to complex systems. Do your research. Make sure that you test with a diverse range of people. Make sure that you work with a diverse range of people. Don't think that you can follow the IDEO model of design thinking and go somewhere with fucking Columbus syndrome and white savior complex and design something that's perfect for someone without working with them and without involving them in that process. It doesn't fucking happen. Complete fucking failure. Documented failure. But we can do it. We can democratize access to complex systems. This is huge. This is design's kind of, I don't want to say it because it sounds fucking cheesy, but superpower. Everything we do boils down to taking a system, whether that's a fucking huge database, a back-end API, something like that, abstracting it enough to where whoever we see as our target audience can impact change upon that. Whether that change is a form field being fucking persisted in a database, or whether it's something wider than that. We are learning every single day better ways of democratizing access to systems. We already gatekeep who allows us. I can't speak today. We already gatekeep who we allow to access our systems. If we decide to make an inaccessible product, we are saying, hey, fuck you, you might be vulnerable, you might be disabled, you might be cognitively impaired, you might be living in poverty, you might not have the socioeconomic movement capabilities to use our product. We're gatekeeping it there. If our design feeds into the status quo, then we're already saying that vulnerable people don't deserve to use it the same way that people with access to resources and materials can use it. We mightn't do this intentionally, you mightn't do it intentionally, but our intent doesn't fucking matter if we're sharing our responsibilities. You need to understand who you're accountable to as well. Same thing as before. Do your fucking research. Make sure it includes the right amount of people. Make sure that everyone you interact with who might use this system and that you are using to learn about what you could create, that you hold yourself accountable to that person. It doesn't have to be a single person that you keep a photo of next to your desk, but if you're doing research to understand a wide range of people, understand that you're accountable to them. What you deliver at the end of it is there to serve them. Fuck off with this. Post-its in a line is not a fucking product, and it's not a way of thinking about a system. Linear flows fly in the face of our need for autonomy, our need for non-linearity, right? If we're building something where you can only do something in an A, B, C, D, shit we may profit kind of way, it's probably shit. I'm sorry, but it is. People are different. We're all vulnerable. We're all fallible. We all do things in different ways. We all fuck up in different ways. We all get punished in different ways when we do fuck up. And design and our design decisions can punish, right? Hey, you didn't do this thing right. Fuck you. Here's a big error. Go away. We need to understand that people express themselves in different ways, and we are building platforms at times for people to express themselves. It doesn't always have to be some crazy fucking journey of self-discovery, but people are idiosyncratic, and we need to treat them as such. And reject bullshit every time of the way. Next time someone asks you for a bit of dopamine injection, tell them Scott said they're a fucking idiot, and they can go and sit in the corner. You can systematize your principles. A lot of the talks today have kind of touched on this kind of point of when you systematize things, you kind of almost like promote adoption, right? You put your principles in place, and you ask folks to adopt them. If you systematize them, this is the easiest way to get like nice, mindful design into the everyday work of your company, right? People fucking love principles. Jeremy showed, we all loved it. When he changed it to be good, a good principle and not just make it usable, everyone was like, shit, yeah, that's good to read, that's great. People like principles. They like it when you challenge them. They like it when, like Jeremy said, when it forces a debate and it forces prioritization. You can do it the same way with mindful design practices. If you say that you care more about autonomy than profit, fucking tell people you work with, get that systematized. As well, other organization models too. Like, I've shat on VC-funded, metrics-driven startups a lot. And we might feel that's the only way. That's the only way to succeed in this industry, is to join a fucking monolithic tech giant or to join a startup that ultimately boils down to hedge funds that benefit monolithic tech giants through VC fucking models and rewards institutional power and isn't equitable. We have co-ops. Co-ops are a thing. They've existed for fucking ages. You can start a co-op. You can start a B Corp. You can be accountable to different things other than shareholders. Worker-owned corporations. These exist. These have existed since fucking, profit skimming became a fucking thing. Worker-owned corporations are proven to work, and they give workers autonomy over the decisions and an impact on the decisions that the company can make. I think Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, Clear Left, worker-owned. How's that going? Great. It's a viable solution. People mightn't think it is right now because the model that we see the most is VC-backed bullshit, but it's a viable solution. Burn everything to the ground, start growing weed in an eco-feminist commune for the rest of your life. It's my favorite one. Right, we're not there yet. Most of us here, I'm willing to bet, work in that system. We work within the VC-funded or the FANG tech giant monolith. And it's rewarding for us at times. We do good work. It can be impactful work. We get paid ostensibly lots of money to do it, but we're not there yet as an industry to necessarily branch out and have new models be the new status quo. We might never get there, but at least we can fuck some shit up in the process of trying. All right, done.